confirm it's streaming. What's the stream link? I have no idea. Go to RC3 Club on YouTube. We just need to start that. We're way fucking long.
Alright. Fuck. Jesus. I just dented my MacBook. I just dented it.
I've done that. It sucks.
I'm gonna cry now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I've done it multiple times.
Cool.
Yo, is this working?
Can you check?
Yeah.
It's working?
Is it the same as this one? Can you see the stream? Somebody else said. The stream is not on mine. Oh yeah. Today is this week 4?
Yeah, it's week 4. We're live, dude.
No, we're
Oh,
not.
no, you just went offline.
We're not live on YouTube though.
Yeah.
We're kind of live. Go log into YouTube. As us.
Do we have a shadow?
Oh,
You're logged in right there. I mean, I can start. Stream your part.
We're like almost an hour behind.
Alright. Jill, you want to whistle? Hey guys, how's it going? Sorry for that. Alright, welcome back to RC3. Sorry about the delay. Welcome to week 4. It's good to see most of your faces back, but yeah. So for those of you who are new and don't know who we are, we're RC3, we're RIT's Competitive Cybersecurity Club. What we do is that we're here to showcase your security talent and to also teach you security from the very beginning to the more advanced stuff. Hour 1, we do announcements and a topic. So I'm doing announcements. Susan's going to be doing the topic. And if you want to, we personally suggest that you take like you make some sort of like field guide so you can kind of go along and look back to it later on after, after club hours end. Hour 2 is challenges. So every week, Joel, our tech lead, produces like a series of challenges that you can do, and if you do them, you kind of like use that to learn the topic of the week. And we also personally just suggest that you should definitely do them because that's how you learn. And we'll be walking around to help you out. Sign in to RC3.club if you guys can all do that really quick for me. But yeah, so signing in helps us get sponsors, it helps us host awesome competitions, it gives us money to actually do things, it actually tells the club office that we exist and don't just spend money on like, I don't know, things.
Garbage.
Yeah, garbage. Yeah. Cool. While you guys are doing that, welcome back. If anyone's new, make sure to say hi to them. Come talk to us on the RIT C3 Slack. Come go on site discussion if you have any comments on our. Does anyone not know what Slack is? I can't speak today. No? Cool. Okay, so we have a channel called Site Discussion. It's where you can talk about like the new website that we made, and also if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, if you scroll down to the bottom of RC3 Club, you can sign up there. It uses MailChimp. We just recorded Answer last night. It's a little bit late, but released it last night. You can go to listen.rc3.club. We have an intro with music now, so that's really cool. We talk about Equifax and things like that. Hi, Mark. But tell us your feedback at rc3.club, that Typeform link. It's really pretty if you guys want to do that. Also, feel free to ask questions at that link. We get it here, and we'll know. Otherwise, website changelog. This week, you'll get your flags back, so everything that you've done, you'll get your answers. We're working on the week 1 scores. It'll come once we figure out like Mongo and once people aren't actually using it, because it'll be a little bit of scheduled downtime. Otherwise, we should have a user count on the scoreboard as well, so you can know how many people are actually participating. But yeah, if you have a bug or like a feature request, make sure to just ping us on site discussion. So once again, like last week, we have junior nominations. We have junior positions. So junior tech lead and junior operations. Those are the two that are going to be helping Susan and Joel throughout the week. It's a great opportunity to kind of learn and also just be a part of like leadership within the security community. Nominations will close this Saturday night, and the way it works is that after you've been nominated, eBoard will contact you and interview you, and we will decide on the nominees on on who we feel fits the position best. But definitely take advantage of this opportunity. If no one nominates you, nominate yourself. What's up, Frank?
Do you guys need some skills for the junior positions?
So we can only pick one junior position. We can only pick one person for each junior position. So it really comes down to what happens in the interview.
But yes, you do need skills.
Yeah, you do need a little bit of technical skills. We also stress like the want to learn and to improve yourself.
It's also like a mentoring type of position. So I will mentor you as like a junior ops person, and Joel will also mentor you as like a tech junior.
Yeah. Definitely take advantage of it. As Mike said last week, we're looking into maybe trying to do a little mini money man kind of thing.
So right now, currently, like I have tickets and stuff that track what I do, but like as for if I were to suddenly disappear tomorrow, which may or may not happen, we would need someone that would be able to kind of do what I do, understand networking with sponsors, being able to handle professional relationships, that stuff. So if you're interested in something like that, feel free to reach out to me. It's nothing official right now, but we're working on it. Basically just training someone up to take over my position.
Yeah, but you do have to dress like that every single week. Also, interest groups, we have 3 of them so far. We have Team Contagion, Reversing, and Red Team. Ben is also doing this like Red Team, Blue Team during Hack Night, so definitely check them out. Each one, I think, has its own Slack channel. And what interest groups are basically if you want to do a deep dive into a topic with your friends, by yourself, and or just like anyone in RC3, definitely contact me. You can contact me on Slack, or you can email me, and you can kind of apply to RC3 as an interest group. We'll provide you resources, streaming stuff, like money, all that stuff to do your own thing. Yeah, and also you can get the elusive sign-in flag by going to these. If you guys don't know already, that we have a sign-in flag every single week, and you get 10 points just for coming to any security-related meeting. And next top, which isn't security, but whatever. But community shoutouts, Sparsa, Fridays 2:20 to 4:20. That's right after us, so we always just head over. They have free pizza, which is great. And it's in Golisano 2400, which is the room over there. They do student research presentations. They also do hack nights on Monday nights, 7 to 9 in Golisano Sec Lab right here. And they just get together and build something cool. I know Ben's doing a really cool project right now. And also definitely check out Next Hop, which meets every other Tuesday, 6 to 8 in the networking lab. You want to give a quick spiel about it?
Yeah. So if you like some of the stuff that we did last week, like networking, you like systems administration stuff, come to Next Hop. You'll learn about that sort of thing. Our next meeting, we're going to be doing career stuff because October 4th is the career fair. So if you want to learn some skills on how to get a job, come learn from us too.
Word. Yeah. So really quick, it's like week 4. I just want to give you guys like a motivational pep talk. I just want you all to know that you'll get there. It just takes time. I know that I did this when I was a freshman, that I saw the upperclassmen and I was like, whoa, these guys are super smart and I won't ever be as great as them at what they do. But honestly, it just takes time. Just persistence is key, and just keep coming to meeting, keep doing things, go to competitions, or just explore projects on your own. Like, I think that people constantly overestimate what they can do in a year and then underestimate where they'll be in like 2 or 3. So definitely just like keep going. Don't feel down. Like, if you aren't getting the RC3 challenges, don't worry about that. As long as you're trying, that means so much more. But
so,
yeah.
Quick note on that. Just kind of a general thing too. I've had a couple people come up to me and ask like, how do you handle like you suddenly start in security and you're just like bombarded with like articles upon topics upon like everything. And I just wanted to make a quick note that like if you guys have any questions or you're feeling overwhelmed, feel free to reach out to eBoard at any time. We're here to talk with you guys, help you guys out. And also, like, don't completely drown yourself in everything. Like, there's a lot to learn, and I totally emphasize learning, but don't, like, absolutely kill yourself with it. You know, make sure you guys stay focused on your classes. Make sure you stay focused on you know, not necessarily like constantly having a social life, but like you need to take a break sometimes.
Yeah. Just make sure you sleep and eat. But quick disclaimer.
You can't confirm.
Quick disclaimer before we start. On to the good stuff. Everything we teach is for educational purposes only. We hold no responsibility for what you do. So don't be dumb. Don't be a dick. You've been warned. And welcome to the cloud.
All right, everyone. My name is Susan. I do operations for RC3. I'm also known as the baby ops lad. Feel free to ping me on Slack at any time. I can answer most questions or direct you to the right resources. Just a quick note on this. If you guys have questions, write them down and write which slide they're on because there's a lot of content we got to cover. Also, Vape Nation, my dudes. So we're going to be talking about cloud services for this presentation, and like cloud is kind of a meme. You don't really know what it means, and really what it's all about is hosting like your services instead of on your own hardware. You're having another company do it, which takes out a lot, like allows you to abstract things a lot more, put your engineering time towards the application and not hosting your own infrastructure, which is a lot of work. So there's like three really big, you know, public clouds or public hosting, and that's AWS, Amazon Web Services, Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud, and Google Cloud Compute, which is GCP. Basically, it's like a suite of virtual machines that allows you, or containers, that allows you to host your stuff in this remote cloud. But today, I'm specifically going to be focusing on AWS because that seems to be the most popular cloud service and probably what you guys will be working with in industry. So I'm going to go through what the AWS breakdown is in terms of what machines are available for you to host your applications on, or if you're doing big data stuff, or like generally what's available there. And I'm going to focus on computing, storage, and some other MISC things. So specifically storage for AWS is the main two things are S3 and the Elastic File System. S3 is a distributed block storage, so kind of like Ceph. It allows you to put, you know, images, files, etc. on this S3 bucket and be able to access it globally, and it's distributed across a couple different machines internally. An Elastic File System is like a network file system share. Think of, you know, NFS or other such things, Samba. And it allows you to mount these distributed file systems across your EC2 instances and separate them out from S3. So databases specifically, AWS offers several services. One of them is databases, Hadoop clusters. There's a DynamoDB, which is a NoSQL database. You have Redshift, which allows you to have a big data warehouse where you can pipeline data into Hadoop or Spark, which so you can do MapReduce. And then there's Elastic MapReduce, which is like Hadoop clusters that allow you to do this actual data manipulation. And then, of course, RDS, which is a Postgres database underneath, last time I checked. And that's really good if you don't want to run your own MySQL servers within EC2. Okay. And so AWS also provides a lot of networking support, so you can have your own VPCs, which are kind of like subnets, security groups in front of your instances, allowing traffic in and out. There's CloudFront, which acts as a CDN, which is like, hey, I'm a host here. What's the fastest route to get to this S3 bucket or this EC2 instance? And then Route 53, which is Amazon's DNS. We're going to break that down. So VPCs, super important. You have all of your instances within a VPC. So it acts as a CIDR block, and it's exposed to the public web as one IP address. You can make them private. And everything within your VPC is private by default. It's just exposed by that one IP. So within a VPC, you can lock down. You can create CIDR blocks to create more subnets and put your instances within the subnet. So you can have, let's say, I want all of my web servers in one subnet, and then within that, I want my my databases in another subnet, and then my S3 bucket in another subnet, my EMR in another subnet, and then there's an ELB standing in front of each subnet, allowing it to distribute traffic among, or a load balancer in front of each web server to distribute traffic that way. So within, we're going to go kind of into security groups because within a VPC you can have security groups attached, and that allows you to allow certain traffic in. You cannot deny any traffic. There's network ACLs for that. And you can, like, for instance, if you have your web servers, you want to only allow, like, port 43 or 443 and 80 traffic in. You want to, like, deny certain traffic out so that people can't, you know, see what outgoing connections there are, etc. EC2 security groups specifically, which are the classic security groups, are attached to an instance specifically. So you have instances under these shared security groups. If an instance is not in a security group of another instance, they cannot talk to each other. And then there's VPC security groups, which is like new security groups, which is no longer deprecated, or like the new thing. Old security groups are deprecated, and that's where like VPCs cannot talk to each other if they're outside of that security group. And so CloudFront, which is their CDN, and Route 53. Route 53 is a distributed DNS service, so it can be accessed from anywhere in the world, very fast, and their content delivery network is also very fast and distributed, lots of edge nodes. It's very cool. And these are great because they are integrated really well. Okay. They're integrated really well into your EC2 instances, your ELBs, and your S3 instances, as well as other services like EMR, etc., that allow you to like route things very well. So there exists the AWS console where you do all of this work. So setting up your EC2 instances, which is where you're doing like all of your application work, setting up your S3 buckets, etc. But we don't want to have to click through the console every time and give every user a login. It's kind of a pain. So instead we have something called AWS IAM roles, which are like they're a client ID and a key that allows you to use the CLI or other tools to programmatically stand things up. So it's really good because you can manage who has access to the AWS account, and it allows fine-grained controls. So if you have an IAM key that only has access to one S3 bucket versus the root account, if somebody owns those AWS keys, they only have access to that one S3 host. Whereas if they have like the root keys, they can have access to all of your instances, and then you're super boned. Yes. So actually, one note: if you get the IAM for the root key, which some people accidentally put root keys within like Git repositories, etc., then you can auth in the AWS CLI and have access to all of their things. So there's a couple additional services that I'm not going to go into too much detail about. So there's CloudTrail, which is really important for like monitoring API access. So via the CLI, if somebody's making weird requests, you can have CloudTrail be like, hey, sending an alert, someone's messing with your AWS account. That's kind of a big deal. You also have a trusted advisor, which acts as kind of a metric for AWS hardening. So are you using IAMs? What access do your IAMs have? Do you have multi-factor authentication enabled? What security groups aren't being used? If you have like a security group lying around and somebody gets access to that, that could be very bad. You also have a certificate manager, so it can issue SSL and TLS certs for your applications, which is very useful and integrated into AWS. You also have config, which acts like a configuration integrity. So when somebody changes your configuration, or like some application accidentally edits it, it sends you an alert of, hey, it changed to an undesired state and could potentially give you vulnerabilities. There's also operations tools. CloudFormation is really big. It allows you to programmatically stand up your infrastructure, so you can be like, I want a VPC that does this with these CIDR blocks, which are their own subnets, and then I want it to deploy these EC2 instances with these images. There's a company called HashiCorp. It's come out with a lot of really cool, nice-to-use tools that allow you to have a little easier to use API for interacting with these services, because CloudFormation can be kind of a pain in the butt to work with. Terraform specifically works on like the networking side of things and provisioning instances, whereas Packer allows you to create machine images for things. So if you have your application, you can deploy it into a Packer image and then build that with Terraform. Super neat. AWS also offers a directory service. So if you have Active Directory within your company, you can also manage that through AWS, which is pretty neat. So I'm going to go through like what a typical SaaS company looks like. SaaS is like service as a service. So Slack, for instance, is a SaaS company where they host all their things on the cloud and users interact with them. So what would that look like? Kind of like a small company and like from a high level view. So as a user, you're going to be pinging the VPC here, which like is routed to through DNS and your CDN, depending which one you use. And it's going to hit that ELB. That ELB is going to be like, hey, I'm going to distribute or pick which host to send this traffic to. ELB, remember, is a load balancer. So it decides, hey, this host has less traffic, let's send traffic there. So you can have lots of web servers and your ELB takes care of distributing it. Super neat. You can also have that ELB be your point of contact for that one single IP that is visible to the public. So you have web servers, you probably have a database that's storing all of your information about your application, and that's going to be in a private subnet, because why would I want anybody that's able to access this VPC to be able to access my MySQL database? There's a lot of important information on there. And those web servers are going to be able to talk to this subnet, and specifically the database. And then what if you want an S3 bucket? You have files, you have images, you have videos, etc. You need to store them somewhere. And then that's also going to be in its own private subnet, which makes it so other people can't access those things. And then the web servers also talk to that. So yeah, that's a typical SaaS company, setup. It's pretty neat, pretty simple, and it's really, yeah. So let's go into like common EC2 security mistakes. If you guys remember, EC2 is an instance where most of your application work is going to be done. So you have your web server is an EC2 instance. If you want to set up your own MySQL database, it's an EC2 instance, etc. So global permissions to access TCP or UDP ports in security groups. So if you have like, hey, your security group by default allows all traffic in, allows all traffic out. If you have your EC2 instances set to that default security group, people can just like send any traffic or receive any traffic, which obviously is very dangerous. So you can do, like, you can kind of manage this by having your security groups like have CIDR ranges. So I'm only allowed to receive traffic from this block of IPs, or you can set it to known IPs that like it's safe to get it from this database. This database has this static IP, we're good. And another common mistake is that people do all of their work like with their root AWS account. So they have an IAM key that is for the root account, and that's the one interacting with the EC2 instance every time, which is super dangerous. If somebody grabs that key, they now have access to your entire AWS infrastructure. They can create their own account, and then they can log into your console and do whatever they want. And another thing is you really want to enable CloudTrail so you can see who is accessing your API, get alerts for that. So EC2 does snapshots, so it's backups of your VM or your container or whatever it is. Snapshots are restricted to whatever account they're on, and you can enable public snapshots. So you can have like somebody is like, oh, I have an authenticated account, but it's not under your account, but I can still sync your snapshot onto my machine. From there, hey, I have Nginx configs, I have files with passwords, etc., and they can get all of those passwords and get into your account. Luckily it's not a default option, but it's something you can set if you're not being careful. So there exists this magic IP, 169.24. Yeah, you guys can read it. And many of the cloud services use this for metadata about their instances running within their cloud. So Google uses this, Azure uses this, AWS uses this. And if you're able to send a request to that EC2 instance, an HTTP request, you can find the path that the metadata is being sent through. So you have your domain, a certain path, that IP, and then you have like all sorts of information in there. So you can have session token IDs, you can have AIM keys, you can have all sorts of things being sent to these instances, and you can find them. So this is actually a big problem. There was a bug bounty on it, and Google kind of went around this by they made all of their HTTP headers that are like, hey, this is from Google. If it's not from Google, like reject all traffic, but AWS has no such restrictions. And the way we kind of get around that is ensure that your applications that people have access to cannot access this IP. So if they go to that path, it's not going to send them anywhere. And then make sure that your IAM roles are like super restricted, right? Don't have your root account. You have specific accounts. Make them have very minimal access or only what they need. So if they do get owned, you're not owned. So I'm going to go into common S3 mistakes. S3 is the block storage. People can mount it as a file system as well, and people use S3 for a lot of things. Any long-term data storage is used with S3. So, take a drink of water real quick. S3 by default has extremely broad permissions. So when you set up an S3 box, it's like, hey, anyone can access this. You don't need to be authenticated. Here's all my root directory or whatever on your S3 box. And then from there, you can see like all sorts of data that you might not want them to see. And there's also default read and write permissions, so they could write to your S3 box, which is dangerous. It's very common for people to expose a Git directory within an S3 bucket. So if it's public or even authenticated users can look at it regardless of whether they're on your IAM. They can look at your Git history, and we all know that developers like to put their credentials in a Git directory or like your Git commit history, and they may remove it later, but it's still in the history, and you can revert and find those keys. Other passwords can also be exposed, etc. So it's very common for people to mount S3 as a file system because this means that you don't have to really write additional stuff within your application to interact with a S3 instance. It makes things easier for developers. However, if people get access to your S3 box, now they have everything that you have on there. So you have your Nginx configs, your passwords, etc., and they all have access to that. So that can be a very dangerous thing if you don't monitor it correctly. So for the actual demo part, you guys are going to need to create an AWS account. You're going to need to download the CLI. So the GitHub pack allows students to create an AWS account, and it gives you a bunch of credits. There's also a free tier. Be warned, you do need a payment card, which is annoying, but they won't actually charge you anything, which is nice. And downloading the CLI, here's a bunch of guides for people using Mac. There is the brew install, AWS CLI. Linux it's just through pip. Windows, I think the PowerShell module is really, really nice from what I've heard, and there's guides for that as well via that link. So there's a part here for registering your account with the CLI. You can configure with your CLI, and it asks for your access key and your secret key, and you have to create that IAM role via your account. Super easy. It shows you all the instructions on how to do that. And if you ever need to edit those IAM keys, let's say if you find some IAM keys and you want to ping an S3 box or an EC2 instance, you can edit that within your home directory config and the credentials as well. So some useful commands with the CLI. We have like ls, which allows you to list all of the files within your S3 bucket. Sync if you want to download the bucket onto your machine, and you can like look through it and then mount it, or you can copy individual directories recursively as well, which is cool. A big thing with how AWS does some security controls is that you need like a region or what the name of the S3 bucket is, and you can use like dig, NSLOOKUP, whatever other tools are available to find that. There's also the EC2 API, which there's a lot of stuff, so I didn't list that here, but I did list the reference. So here are some resources: Terraform, running your infrastructure as code, the PowerShell module, and API references. And RC3 has a grant from AWS for 10,000 credits. So if you guys want to do projects, etc., with AWS, come talk to us. We have a lot of money. And questions? Can you run AWS in a virtual machine? No. So AWS is not an open source infrastructure, and it's also massive. So a cloud infrastructure, this might not have been explained well, is hosted by another company. Think of it as they have a data center, they have a suite of tools, and then you're allowed to access those tools in that data center, but you can't really run a data center in a virtual machine.
The opposite.
What?
It's kind of the opposite. Like they have VMs.
Yeah, they have VMs for you to use, etc.
All right. So how much time would a junior position take? I don't know. How much time does a junior position take?
So junior position, at least for me, it'll probably be somewhere around 10 hours a week. It's somewhat like a part-time job. You gotta think of all the challenges. You gotta put the challenges together. You gotta test the challenges, and then you gotta deploy the challenges, all alongside me.
So for ops specifically, it really depends what your like base knowledge is. A lot of what I'll be doing is like, hey, read up on these things, or I'm setting up the CTF infrastructure with Terraform or something, and we can work on this in like a paired programming sort of environment. But I'd say like max 5 hours a week. I have to do a lot less work than Joel.
Yeah, but it's also as much time as you put in. If you want to consider like learning as a part of like the position's role, but yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna go back to AWS questions. So there is a tool. So it depends like what your Python script is doing, right? If it's like running a Flask application, you can use an EC2 instance, plop that Python script on and run it. There's also something called AWS Lambda, which is like, hey, I don't want the entire server infrastructure, but I want to run this like cron script or this Python script that does some sort of work. Yes, you can do that. It's really neat. There's also something called like Elastic Beanstalk, I believe, which allows you to be like, hey, I have this GitHub application. Here's how to build it. Now post it for me, and I have to do very minimal ops work, which is nice.
Yeah, the thing with Beanstalk is it like deploys your application, and then depending on the load that it's receiving, it'll automatically spin up like more or less instances of that to kind of handle the load. So you don't really have to do anything. You're just like, hey, I want this to work, no matter if one person's coming to it or 10,000 people are coming to it. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Is
it only with Python?
No. So Lambda supports right now Python 2, Python 3, and Node.js.
Ruby as well.
Ruby, yeah, a couple languages.
I think Go, maybe? I don't remember.
Some of the common like web languages.
Cool.
Is there anything else?
But that's the presentation. Thanks, Susan. But really quick, a huge thanks to our sponsors. Grim and IOMax is our platinum sponsors, SIG is our gold, and Draper is our educational sponsors. They're here to help us do what we do. So really quick, that's going to be up in a second, but please hold. Well, it's just week 4.
Week4.rc3.
Week4.rc3.club. Wait, why is there not? Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah. But that's the demo info. It'll be up as a description as well. Otherwise, thanks for oh, that's right. That makes more sense. But otherwise, thanks for listening to us talk. Thanks for letting us present. Give us your feedback at that type form. Otherwise, for the next hour, we'll be doing demo.
Cool.
And Joel's gonna. Who got hard last week? Who got the hard challenge last week? Cool. Yeah. Who wants to know how the hard challenge was done from last week?
Joel, you're gonna do this?
Yeah, you did. All right. Real quick, I'll show you guys.
It wasn't a peanut gallery at all. It was just sitting there.
Thanks for not breaking the box that much. I checked it out today, and it was. I mean, it's on, so that's good. Okay.
What's the wattage of this?
Cool.
65.
The power?
No,
Okay. Cool.
got it, like 90.
Cool.
Actually, fuck.
So, first things first. Okay, so logging in to the box. I'm just gonna do the hard one. So you may have noticed there was a .ssh folder in there, and there were actually keys in there. And if you check the permissions, it's owned by root. And if you cat idrsa.pub, you'll notice it's root at this domain, which is the same. It's the same host name. So what you could do is you could ssh root at localhost. And okay, wow, Jesus. Yeah, very demanding, I guess. And then you're just root, and from there, the flag was hidden in Etsy SSH. And if you scroll down all the way to the bottom, a lot of people probably didn't scroll all the way down. If you did look at this file, so yeah, you did have to go all the way down, but that's where the hard flag was. Yeah. So make sure you check like who owns the private keys that are in the directory, because a root user might have accidentally generated keys for themselves and left them there, like they were SSH keygenning in the wrong directory or something. So yeah, that's it.
Are there any other challenges people want to see from last week?
Yeah.
Yes.
What was the random image?
Okay, so the random image, if anybody has ever seen, well, actually,
not
I
a
changed my
random
desktop
image.
background for the first time in like ever, but maybe I can show it here. You know this picture here?
It's not a random image.
No, this is like the default Mac background for macOS Sierra. So the flag, I don't know if it's gonna work. We can try and make it work. Ooh, okay. Well, somebody broke that. So basically, it was the desktop background of the VNC session. So if you VNC connected in, you may have noticed VNC was running. I don't know if it kept running, but it was running. And if you VNC'd in as RC3 user with the password, or you didn't actually have to specify user, if you just SSH the password as password, you could see it in the background, and there was some there were some files, and we're like, please don't break this smiley face, and apparently somebody ignored that, but that's all right. Yeah. Anything else? No? Cool.
Cool. Thanks, guys. I guess since we don't have that big of an overflow this week, we can all stay here. We'll play music, we'll walk around, we'll be social. It's okay, you can. We'll be social. You can do challenges or just talk to us. Yeah, cool, awesome.